There's a strange irony in how a philosophy that preaches detachment from illusion has itself become one of humanity's most enduring illusions. Buddhism, often draped in the silk of calmness and the fragrance of incense, sells itself as the antidote to suffering. But beneath the soft chants and the serene statues lies something far less tranquil, a system that promises freedom by teaching people to stop wanting it. It's hard not to admire its aesthetics, the golden temples, the meditating monks, the rhythm of bells under morning fog. It all whispers peace. But perhaps that's the first trap. Peace is performance. The calm face of a monk becomes a brand, a living advertisement for inner perfection. The silence itself becomes seductive, a commodity of the soul, marketed, exported, and consumed by a world that can't sit still. When Siddhartha Gautama, the man who became the Buddha, abandoned his palace to seek truth, he wasn't founding a religion. He was running from one illusion only to construct another. His rejection of worldly desire was noble in intent, yet it birthed an empire of metaphysical desire, the craving for non-craving. And that's where it gets deliciously absurd. How does one desire to not desire? To want to stop wanting is still to want. It's like trying to drown thirst by drinking from an empty cup. The cup remains empty, but the act is the same. Still a reaching, still a grasping. Even the act of letting go becomes something to cling to. This is the paradox at the heart of Buddhist thought. Liberation through negation. Suffering exists, says the first noble truth. Desire causes suffering, says the second. End desire, and suffering ends, the third. Follow the path, the fourth, and you shall find nirvana, that tranquil void where the self evaporates like morning mist. It sounds poetic, but the closer you look, the more it feels like the logic of an escape artist who locks himself in a box to prove freedom exists. Because if the self is an illusion, as Buddhism insists, then who exactly is it that desires liberation? Who walks the path? Who practices mindfulness? Who suffers and who transcends it? A doctrine that begins by denying the self ends up constructing a whole elaborate self around the idea of having none. The ego, in a stunning act of irony, survives the execution by pretending to be dead. And then there's the moral varnish applied over this metaphysical puzzle. Buddhism preaches compassion, non-harm, balance, and mindfulness. Lovely words, easy to quote, impossible to question without sounding cruel. But compassion in Buddhism often disguises detachment. To see suffering as illusion is to quietly dismiss it. If nothing truly exists, what does compassion even mean? It's a bit like comforting a crying child while whispering, "Don't worry, you don't actually exist." The Western mind romanticizes Buddhism as an antidote to consumerism, minimalist, serene, enlightened. But the truth is, it's perfectly suited for the modern marketplace. In fact, Buddhism might be the most capitalist religion in disguise, a system of inner austerity that sells the idea of calmness to the exhausted masses, a religion that promises spiritual freedom, yet monetizes every step toward it, from mindfulness retreats to guided meditation apps. The Buddha would have wept if he believed in a self to weep with. But perhaps this is the great genius of Buddhism. It adapts, it dissolves, it mirrors whatever culture absorbs it. In ancient India, it was ascetic. In Tibet, mystical. In Japan, ritualistic. In America, it became a form of emotional self-care, each incarnation claiming to be the true one, all while rejecting permanence as a core principle. A religion that preaches impermanence has never been so permanent, and yet, beneath the surface calm, there's an unmistakable authoritarian tone disguised as spiritual advice. Right view, right intention, right speech, right action. The Eightfold Path is not a set of suggestions. It's a moral GPS that insists there's only one right way to think, speak, and live. You're free, of course, as long as your freedom aligns with the manual. Even the word enlightenment implies hierarchy. There are those in the dark and those who've seen the light, the spiritual elite, the monks of meaning. The rest of humanity apparently is still fumbling with candles. The Buddha taught that clinging to beliefs is the root of suffering. Then he offered one to cling to. He claimed the middle path avoids extremes, but that very path is an extreme, the extreme of denial, of emotional sterilization, of making life a philosophical quarantine. There's an almost surgical cleanliness in Buddhist detachment. It removes pain by removing passion. It ends desire by ending depth. And what is left when you remove all craving, all attachment, all emotion? You get serenity, yes, but serenity that resembles anesthesia, peace perhaps, but the kind found in a morgue. Nirvana, that great promise of liberation, has always sounded suspiciously like an elegant suicide of the soul, the total extinguishing of the flame, not a triumph over suffering, but a surrender to it, to desire nothing, to feel nothing, to be nothing. That is not transcendence. That is absence, beautifully rebranded. It's the psychological equivalent of saying, if life hurts, stop living. And yet, countless seekers spend lifetimes chasing this void, meditating in caves, fasting under trees, chanting until their voices dissolve into silence, all in pursuit of the grand finale of disappearance. It's tragic in a poetic way, like watching someone polish a mirror until there's nothing left to reflect. But maybe the appeal lies precisely in that. Buddhism is a philosophy tailor-made for the weary, the disillusioned, those burnt out by the chaos of existence. It offers an elegant form of escapism, a noble reason to stop fighting. It transforms exhaustion into enlightenment, resignation into wisdom. In that sense, it's not the opposite of modern despair. It's its most refined expression. One of the strangest paradoxes of Buddhism is that it builds an empire on the denial of ownership. Temples, monasteries, entire nations sculpted in its image, each a monument to a philosophy that claims nothing should be clung to. Monks own no possessions, we're told, yet somehow the monasteries around them gleam with gold leaf and marble. The robe may be humble, but the institution wearing it rarely is. It's an exquisite hypocrisy, humility as spectacle. The saffron cloth and the shaved head are symbols meant to erase individuality, yet they become uniforms of identity. The monk becomes a brand ambassador for enlightenment, his silence marketed as wisdom, his poverty mistaken for purity. It's spiritual theater. The audience claps for simplicity while donating millions to sustain it. And then there's karma, Buddhism's moral algorithm, its invisible ledger of cosmic justice, a system so elegant, it explains everything without explaining anything. Why does suffering exist? Karma. Why do bad things happen to good people? Karma. Why are some born into poverty while others into palaces? Karma. It's a belief that flatters the powerful and blames the powerless. If your life is miserable, well, perhaps you earned it, in another life, of course. The beauty of karma is that it's unfalsifiable, no evidence required, no memory of past lives necessary, just an endless chain of moral bookkeeping across lifetimes no one remembers. It's divine bureaucracy without a deity, and yet people accept it eagerly because karma offers something intoxicating, control. It suggests that reality is fair, that the universe keeps receipts. It turns chaos into order, randomness into justice. But look closely. It's not justice, it's cruelty disguised as logic. Karma doesn't comfort the suffering, it indicts them. It turns compassion into condescension. I pity you, but also you must have deserved it. This is perhaps Buddhism's most quietly dangerous idea. By turning suffering into moral consequence, it absolves society of responsibility. Why feed the hungry if hunger is their karmic debt? Why challenge injustice if it's merely a cosmic repayment plan? Compassion, under karma, becomes a spectator sport. You smile serenely as the wheel turns. Even more haunting is Buddhism's relationship with desire. Desire causes suffering, says the Buddha. But without desire, what's left of the human experience? Desire built civilizations, created art, inspired revolutions, composed symphonies. Desire gave us fire, language, and love. It is not the enemy of existence, it is existence. To erase it is to erase the pulse of life itself. And yet, the Buddhist ideal is the erasure of wanting, the quiet flattening of emotion until nothing rises high enough to disturb the mind's surface. But a still pond may reflect beauty. It also reflects nothing of depth. The absence of ripples may look like peace, but it's also the absence of movement, of growth, of the dangerous, glorious unpredictability that makes being human worth the trouble. Buddhism seeks to transcend the ego, but perhaps it underestimates how much of the ego's chaos is also creativity. The self is not merely illusion, it's the theater where meaning plays its parts, Without it, there is no love, no art, no story, only stillness, infinite and indifferent. And then there's reincarnation, the endless wheel of rebirth, samsara, turning endlessly until nirvana cuts the cord. At first glance, it sounds merciful, a cosmic do-over. But in practice, it's the perfect instrument of control. If you believe you'll return endlessly until purified, you'll tolerate anything now: poverty, oppression, even despair. After all, it's just karma working itself out. A system that preaches escape from suffering conveniently ensures no one rebels against it. It's no surprise, then, that Buddhism thrived in feudal hierarchies. While peasants were told to accept their suffering as karmic justice, monks accumulated social and political power. They became moral gatekeepers, interpreting cosmic law, distributing blessings, selling merit. A celestial economy where salvation is traded like currency. And merit, that's the other great trick. You can earn spiritual credit through good deeds, rituals, donations. It sounds altruistic, but it's moral capitalism in saffron robes. Virtue becomes a transaction. Generosity becomes investment. The temple becomes a bank of virtue where good intentions accrue interest. You can't bribe heaven with gold, perhaps, but you can certainly bribe its earthly representatives. The West imported Buddhism as a kind of psychological yoga, mindfulness without metaphysics, enlightenment